is Emmi Beuger's Day Off, the weekly opinion editorial podcast from the Daily Collegian. I'm your host, Emmi Beuger, and I had such a busy week with midterms and working at the Collegian that I needed a day off to record this podcast.
And my name is Souza, and I typically serve as your moderator for this show, but not today, as we have a very special issue for this podcast to go along with our special issue for the opinion editorial newspaper revolving around activism. Now, to tell you more about our guest today, I'll turn it back over to your host, Emmi Beuger.
So our guest today is Kate Leddy. She is a copy editor and our resident den mother at the Collegian. And she also recently produced and co-directed a musical called What's Eating Katie, and it opened last weekend here at UMass. So, Kate, tell us all about you and all these awesome things that you're doing.
Okay, hi. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I just finished producing and co-directing a musical, which is a huge deal for me. I'm so relieved to have it all done. The show was a success on Friday and Saturday, and I'm really happy about it. I'm a public health major, and journalism is my second major. So this was all part of my honors public health project, and in my whole time here at UMass, I've been really interested in the topic of mental health and eating disorders specifically when it comes to public health and activism. So through the past 4 years, I've really been involved in a lot of efforts and organizations that surround that topic, like Active Minds UMass is something I'm still really involved with. They helped us out with our show. I volunteered and interned for the National Eating Disorders Association, and I write a little bit for their blog, Proud to Be Me. So it all sort of accumulated into this project as my final wrap-up for the past 4 years, which is wild. I can't believe I'm a senior. Oh, God.
Well, that's awesome. You're doing, the coolest things.
Thank you.
So how did you get involved with this musical? Where did you get the idea? How did you find it? All of that.
Yeah, so the musical was written by this woman, Dina Zeckhausen, and she actually is a good friend of one of my relatives. And it was over a year ago that this relative reached out to her because she's a psychologist and she's the founder of the Eating Disorders Information Network. So, this relative kind of thought it would be great to have her as a networking person to connect with. He just connected us via email, and I don't think he was aware at the time that she'd written this whole musical, so I started talking to her about ways I might be able to get involved with her organization, and she said to me, well, actually, I wrote a whole musical, and I could give you the script if you ever wanted to bring it to UMass. And that was over a year ago, and at the time I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to have time to bring this to UMass. There's no way it's going to work out. It would be cool if I could do it for a thesis, but it's just too irrelevant to public health because it's theater, so I didn't really think I could stretch it to make it work. But I brought it to the public health department. I talked to a couple people in the honors program and asked them, if I were to incorporate more education with my cast and really kind of write a reflective paper about this and figure out how can we make this relevant to public health. The show itself, it's about eating disorders, which is a huge, huge public health issue. So I asked if I could get approval for it, and they were into it. They really liked the idea. So
that is really, really cool. So when you got this approved, what was the first thing that you did? How do you start producing and co-directing a musical?
Well, first I did a lot of victory dances. I was really excited. But it was a lot. I learned a lot about just all of the different things that need to be done for a project like this, because it was an independent project. I didn't have a team that was there and was like, all right, I'll do marketing, I'll do props, I'll do set. So the first thing I had to start doing, and my faculty sponsor said this to me too, is you need to get money for it. You need to start raising money, you need to find sources, you need to reach out to people, you need to get contacts. So the very first thing I needed to do was talk to people and find people who could help me out on this project. And so I started raising money for it. I started reaching out to a couple organizations, and the very first thing was just, let's get people involved in this because I can't do it just myself.
So I guess a question from me would be, did you have university sponsorship for this particular project, or was it totally independent on your part?
So the only sponsorship was, I didn't have any financial sponsorship. I had someone who was overseeing the project like from an academic standpoint, and I had someone who helped me set up a Minute Fund, which is basically through the university. I was working with Active Minds here on campus, so they as an organization helped me raise some money through a Minute Fund, and they contributed some money, but the university itself wasn't sponsoring me financially, because sort of part of this project in itself was putting it all together on my own, or finding the people who can help me put it together on my own. So it really was a lot of figuring out solo at first how to get these communities involved. And once I did have the Minute Fund, I did get some contributions from some professors here at UMass. I got some members of CCPH, the Center for Counseling and Psychological Health. They contributed some money, and in total we raised just under $2,000, which was very cool. Yeah.
And would you mind me asking just what a Minute Fund exactly is? Because I don't know if I've ever heard of that before. Hopefully somebody who's listening might wonder.
Yeah, the Minute Fund is pretty new, as far as I know, at UMass. It's kind of like a GoFundMe, where it's just a crowdsourcing, the fundraising thing online. And the great thing about it is you do it through the university, so you have to be partnered with an RSO or some kind of organization, because it goes into a university account. But the great thing about it is you get all of the money that you make. Whereas with a GoFundMe, you have commission taken out of it. So I was really excited that Active Minds wanted to get involved, because they not only contributed some money from their account as an RSO, but they also let me channel the money from the Minute Fund into their account so that we could work together to produce this show.
Awesome. And then just one last question before I turn it back over to you, Emmi. The name What's Eating Katie, you said a relative or a friend of a relative had written this before. So was that the original title, or is that something that you interjected into the project?
Yeah, so I've actually, a lot of people have asked me if it's What's Eating Katie, because my name is Kate and it's so close, and that was just a total coincidence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's funny because I have my own personal ties to the subject, but I was like, this it wasn't written about me, didn't change it. Yeah, just a coincidence.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the musical is about?
Yeah, so What's Eating Katie is about a girl named Katie who is going off to college for the first time, and in this case, we had her going to UMass to make it relevant. Yeah, of course, she's going to UMass. Go you. So she's going off to UMass, and she meets this guy named Ed, who, in the play, he is the eating disorder, and he's just a personification of this mental illness. He's not a real person, but we have him on stage, and she meets him, and he kind of starts off with this idea of, well, you're going to college, there's the freshman 15, you've got a lot of things to worry about, you're going to be going to this place that has a lot of Greek life, so maybe this is your chance to start all over with your weight and with your health choices, and maybe this is your chance to get thin. So he kind of starts off with this really alluring idea for Katie. So the play kind of follows this relationship between her and Ed as it grows more and more abusive. And in between all of the scenes in the show, we have these kind of parody commercials. They are these really, really exaggerated commercials about stuff in our diet culture, like fashion, fitness, food. There's one called The Butt Crusher, which I actually was the person performing in that, which is just really aggressive fitness. There's another one called Bingeable Brownies, which is about these vegan, nut-free, carb-free, everything free brownies, so you can eat the whole box, and they're just really exaggerated, and it kind of provided a comic relief to what was happening, but also just a commentary on our culture itself.
Mm-hmm. And was the writer involved at all with the production, or did she come see it?
Yeah, Dina was really involved in the production, which was awesome. She was so helpful with emailing and texting and calling with me because she has been involved in a lot of the productions of this show. It was put on at Emory University, it was put on in Georgia, and so she has gone through the production process, so she had a lot to offer and a lot of ideas that we tossed back and forth. And in the spring, just at the beginning of the semester, I had another faculty advisor come in, because for honors projects you have to have two at least. I had another faculty sponsor come in, and he was able to get the funds to fly her out to see the show. So she was there for opening night, which was amazing, and she participated. We had kind of like a post-play discussion that she participated in, so that was really, really cool to have her there.
Is really cool.
Yeah.
So you were saying earlier how to make it part of like a senior project, you had to incorporate some extra things other than just the musical. You had to do a reflection paper, do some education with the cast. So what was that education that you did with the cast?
We actually did a workshop with the cast, which was really cool. We had Saturday, just in February, a couple weeks ago, we put aside 4 hours and had everyone from the cast come. It took place in the Honors College Events Hall. We had everyone come and we set up some activities and some education workshop things. We had a Walden Behavioral Center, which is a downtown treatment center here in Amherst. They were also sponsoring the show partially, which was awesome, and they contributed to our workshop. They had a therapist come, and she was fantastic. She did these games and activities with the cast where we kind of talked about not just eating disorders, but also like body image and self-love and wellness and how to help a friend if you think they might be struggling with any of those things. And we had a member from the meditation club come in at the end of the workshop kind of just to address that overall wellness aspect of self-love. He led a meditation, and it was just a really great afternoon with everyone. I think the cast was they were really engaging and like listened to each other and talked with each other, and we just kind of had a conversation. So that was probably our biggest effort during the production. And then after both shows, we had a post-play discussion with the audience and with the cast, and there was a member from Walden present at both of those discussions as well. So we just kind of had a conversation about what was missing, what did you like, and what are your thoughts?
And you told us that you were the producer, but it sounds like you've done did a lot more than just produce and co-direct. So can you elaborate on everything that you were in charge of?
Yeah, I've been sleeping a lot this week. Now that the show's done, I'm just this was a really unique experience for me because it wasn't just learning about public health efforts and learning about directing. It was marketing, it was props, it was putting the set together. The unique thing about this show is that most productions with like the theater guild or like the theater department around here on campus, they have a team for everything. They have like the entire artistic team, and aside from the tech stuff like sound and lighting, which was provided by someone from Beuger, which is where we had our show at Beuger Auditorium, aside from that tech stuff, I was pretty much in charge of everything else. I was in charge of the fundraising, hiring my co-director and pianist, marketing, like I made the flyers, I put up the flyers, I did a lot of the outreach to, get attention for the show. I purchased all the props and like the set pieces. A lot of them actually came from my house. It was a lot all wrapped into one. Like I even learned about I did some video interviews with the cast. I bought a Nikon camera. I'd never really used a camera professionally, so I kind of was like, let me just toss in that too. So it was a learning experience in a lot of ways, and it was a very exhausting one, of course, but really worth it in so many ways.
And you said it was a learning experience, so what was the biggest thing that you took away from the experience, and what do you want the biggest thing for the audience and the cast to take away from the experience?
Yeah, both of those kind of tie into each other for me, because something that I was really aiming to do even before this show became a reality, something I was really aiming to do is make this a very diverse and inclusive show, because I think that was if you're going to do a visual narrative of something, if you're going to talk about something and have like a production or a video or something, I think it's really important that you have some diversity in there. And that means, we want to get away from this stigma that eating disorders are something that a white upper class female struggles with, because that's a huge stigma, a huge problem on our campus and any campus and society. So I was really hoping to have some diversity in the cast, and I learned you can't control that. You can't control who auditions for your show, and especially we're on a very predominantly white campus. So something that was really important was, regardless of who we have in this show, and we had a wonderful cast, we had a really talented cast, but regardless of the different races, genders, sexual orientation, if we can't have minority groups in the show just by circumstance, then it's got to be something that we prioritize talking about. And I think some members of the audience definitely commented on that. I had a survey that I had everyone fill out and give their feedback, and some people did comment about like, well, you should have made Katie a person of color, or you should have done this, or you should have done that. And to all those, my response is always like, I would love to have this representation, perfectly out there, but there's so many things that aren't in my control in terms of like who auditions. And, I think we had a really, really talented group. I'm really happy with all of our cast members in the show, but it was something to really remember going forward, and something I think we did try to include in a lot of our workshops and stuff, talking about eating disorders in the transgender community, in the lesbian, gay, bisexual community, in different cultures and everything. It was definitely something we tried to highlight, but I learned that the post-play discussion, if you're going to do something like this, the discussion afterwards is really important, so that you have an opportunity to say, hey, this is what you saw on the stage, and this is how it is for a lot of people. White upper-class females do struggle with eating disorders, but there's also all of these other groups. So you got to be able to have that conversation with the people that are engaging with your project as well.
So when people traditionally think of activism, they think of rioting or picketing and protests, but what you're doing is a different kind of activism through media. So how do you think that this activism is important, and how do you think it affects the way people think about things in a different way than quote-unquote traditional activism?
I definitely think all activism is really important. I think that type of activism is super important. I think this kind of activism, doing it through art and theater, is kind of a unique way to do it as well, because I think theater can provoke a lot of emotions in people, and I felt like this was a kind of unique way to get people's attention, because some people came to see the show because they care about the topic interested them. Other people just came to see the show because they like musicals and they like theater, and I think the comedy aspect of the show was very effective, because comedy can be really political. Comedy can definitely have a huge impact, and it can reach a lot of audiences, because like, who doesn't love to laugh? Comedy is appealing to people, and so this show, for me, I felt was a good way to reach a lot of different audiences that might not otherwise be thinking about this stuff. And when you're picketing, you're trying to get attention in that way too, and that can be really effective work. And I think doing it with theater and bringing the audience in and then having a conversation with them felt like it was effective in the way that it was really intimate, and it was really personal for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people left our show and said that they could relate directly to how Katie was feeling, or how this character was feeling, or that character. So it felt like we were reaching people one-on-one, as opposed to going out and, talking to masses in like a big group of people. And, both ways are important, but I think it's important to have, because they're, both effective in their own ways, I think it's so important to have both out there in the world.
So you're a senior and you're graduating in the spring.
Don't remind me.
I know, it can be scary, but so where are you going to go from here? Are you going to be continuing to do these things with NITA or on your own, or what kind of activism are you still going to pursue after graduation?
Yeah, I definitely want to still be involved with NITA, and I want to still be involved with a lot of the organizations that we touched base with. Like, I learned a lot about the Walden Center, love to be involved with them. I think just in the field of eating disorder treatment and mental health advocacy and everything, I'd really like to stay involved with that. I'm actually submitting a proposal for the 2017 NITA conference, which is in November. I'm submitting a proposal to NITA about this play, and Dina's been so supportive of that. I want to submit, portions of my thesis about this different way to talk about eating disorders. So, NITA, if you're listening, can you accept my proposal? That would be cool. But yeah, I really want to be able to, keep talking to people about this. And I didn't think that I would be so interested in continuing to pursue theater specifically on this topic, but that would be really cool to, do this even with like maybe younger generations, because theater is relevant to a lot of people. A lot of people are interested in that. So that would be a cool thing to pursue as well. But I just think I want to stay in the field in general, and I hope I can get a job when I graduate.
It's the ultimate job for everybody.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kate, for coming on.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to have you. I learned a lot. I'm sure Nick
I
learned a
absolutely
lot.
did, yes. This was
And
a very informative podcast.
And I'm really, really excited for people to get to hear all about this amazing project that you just completed, because that's a huge achievement.
Absolutely. So, thank you again, Katie, for joining us. And for all of our listeners, after you're done listening to this podcast, please, I encourage you to pick up the Campus Activism special issue that the Daily Collegian is printing out this week. And we'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.